Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our webinar series. Over the past few weeks, we've connected about communication, connection, and then this final one is about hope. I'm coming from Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center. I'm an outpatient therapist at the Red Wing office, and Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center serves all populations from childhood through adulthood. And if you're in need of services of any kind related to your mental health, please call 1-800-657-6777 or online at www.hvmhc.org. If you or someone you love is experiencing a mental health crisis, please contact our mobile crisis response service at 1-844-274-7472. And just be aware that right now, due to COVID, they're not responding in person, but they're available 24/7 by phone. And just a little bit of housekeeping, if we're having some technical difficulties of any kind, we'll just try to work our way through that. And it appears I am not able to move my screens. So I apologize for that, and we'll try to get this figured out. All right, there we go. It looks like it's moving forward now. And again, I said I'm Sabrina Locke, and I'm a licensed social worker, and I work outside of the Red Wing office as an outpatient therapist. And I primarily work with children and families, but I see adults as well. And one of the biggest experiences that I have in my life is the fact that I'm a mom of a blended family of 10 kids. And so when I really talk about these things, I talk about my own experiences, it's from a very sincere place of I've walked through this, and I'm walking through this journey with all of you struggling with many of the same things that you're all struggling with right now. Today we're going to talk about hope, and I really feel like hope is the alternative to giving up, laying down in the corner, and just stopping life until this is all over. Hope is really that opposite feeling of hopelessness. And when I first learned about, first started hearing about COVID-19, it was kind of a dose of reality for me because I really downplayed it at first. When I first kind of thought of, oh yeah, that's we've heard that before, we've heard of all of these diseases in other countries, and it really didn't make sense enough for me to process it when it first started being talked about that it was coming here and that this was going to be a big deal in America. My initial thoughts were, yeah, this will be over by summer. And, as time went on, it really started to strike me that this was a really big deal that was going to change a lot of things in life. I certainly did not think that it would continue to go on. And then I started to see that there were like a lot of ways it impacted my life. During this time, I knew that it was going to change how my family functioned and things we were looking forward to, and different things that we wanted to do in our life we were going to have to give up. One of the things, my daughter had a Sweet 16 planned for years. She had wanted this big party and her friends, and had this really, really amazing plan. And we just knew she wasn't going to be able to have her friends come for this Sweet 16. And so we were feeling a lot of disappointment. I had another child graduating from high school, and that child missed, that traditional walk ceremony, a lot of those senior moments of, band trips, those types of things, really just lost out on a lot of that during this last year. And of course, proms and, just time with friends and all of these things. And every single one of us has probably been able to identify some things that we've really had to give up because of COVID. And when we start to look at all of these things that we have to give up and all these things that COVID has really taken out of our life, it starts to feel like our whole world is hopeless. It starts to kind of consume us when we sit and we say like, oh, we had to give this up and we couldn't do this, and we had to stay quarantined for this long, and I still can't even give my mom a hug, or whatever that looks like. And it can really consume our joy, our perspective, and our ability to see anything else. It becomes our world, This one situation, this one thing can become our whole world, and it becomes the vision through which we see every other situation, good or bad. And it's easy to lose hope, and it's much harder to get hope back. So when we focus on COVID-19 as this problem that's our whole world, and it's how we see everything else, we just begin to have this sense of hopelessness. We feel hopeless as people. And so when we take off the COVID-19 sunglasses that we're looking at the world from, we realize that it's only one piece of our lives. COVID-19 has, let's just call it a major, like, sucky factor. There are a lot of things about COVID. There's a lot of situations that COVID has brought up, like things we haven't been able to do or experiences we haven't been able to have during this time that COVID has put a damper on, right? But COVID-19 is in itself one small part of our lives. And when we let it become the way we see the world and our entire situation, it starts to feel like it's too much. It's too much to handle, and we start to just experience hopelessness. When we lose our hope, we lose our joy in the present because we have no confidence in the future. When we stop being able to, like, really experience joy and happiness and hope for right now, we really feel like we can't see beyond next week or next month or, you know, any kind of situation past just how much it really sucks right now. It's important that we put it into perspective. Hopelessness eliminates our ability to problem solve. When stuff comes up and we feel hopeless, it's really, really difficult to stop and say, this is what I'm going to do to solve that problem. It says, nope, we can't do that because of COVID. Nope, we can't do that because of COVID. And hopelessness prevents our ability to say, you know what, we can't do that, but we could do this instead. Hopelessness prevents us from seeing the good in our lives. When we become hopeless, we become unable, or it becomes much more difficult to see what's going well because we see everything through this film of hopelessness, and we see this film of, you know, because of COVID, everything is hard in our lives. Hopelessness really does consume our emotional capacity to handle life's ups and downs. If you've noticed in yourself or in your kids, when we're feeling this way and we're not sure what's going to happen and we're experiencing a lot of fear and anxiety, when something small happens, even unrelated to COVID, we experience that a little differently than maybe we would when things are going well. And so, like, say the car breaks down, it's going to be, you know, it's going to feel like the end of the world. It's going to feel much, much worse than had it happened when things were going well. And I think that's why it's important right now to move COVID out of the world of your life into the it's pretty sucky right now box, and move other things up. Separate the pandemic from your whole life. It is not the only thing going on, good or bad. And I think it's important to put that into some smaller sections, because when you can tackle problems separately, you can say, well, even though COVID's going on, some things are going well. When you tackle problems all together or with the COVID lens of like everything is awful, it's really hard to really problem solve or think things through and come up with solutions. You might have multiple things going on at one time, but there's always something good. There's always a solution that we can come up with at the end of the day to create some joy. And it's important to start that by looking forward to the small things. When you wake up in the morning, what's something that you're looking forward to? Start to notice some things that are going well. Start to notice that there are good things happening. Even today, even right now, even with COVID, there are things that are going well. And it's about really observing those simple joys of life. And I think one thing COVID has done in a positive way for my life is it slowed my family down. We got back to connecting over very simple things, reading stories together, laughing about, you know, dumb jokes, or just watching a show all together. It brought us all back to this place of being able to just be grateful to be together and to be healthy and appreciate those things again. And so I think one thing that we can do to retain or regain hope is to note or write down or do something to just notice some things that you're looking forward to this week. One of the things I'm looking forward to this week is a phone call with my mom. We try to talk once a week and just check in. And we have our coffee together on a Friday morning before I go to work. And I'm looking forward to that. And I think every single day, even sometimes multiple times a day, I have things I look forward to. I'm looking forward to going outside and seeing some sunshine and not snow after work today. And I think observing those simple things can remind us that things aren't all bad. Noticing what's gone well recently that you can continue to do kind of gives you some control. What's gone well that you can continue to support and help do? Are your kids doing really well in a certain area? Are you really proud of a parenting moment? Last week we talked about connection and ways to connect with your kids, even through a pandemic. And I think, are there things that you did this week to connect with your kids that have gone really well, that make you feel really proud as a parent? Or are you looking forward to doing some things with your kid or your children or your spouse that you can continue to do? And what are you grateful for? Observing things, you know, your own health, your children's health, your home or your job, or you know, anything, a best friend to call, just even those small things, food on the table. Appreciate what you have. And I think the focus on those things that we're grateful for and appreciative for change our perspective from COVID sunglasses to joyful, grateful, hopeful sunglasses. And our lens in the world shifts from COVID's our whole situation, it's everything going on, to a more hopeful outlook on the world. And then, are there any things that you can do to take care of yourself every day? Maintaining your self-care and really saying, I matter in this situation, even with this going on. I matter, my family matters, and how can I take care of myself daily? What are those things that you enjoy doing that haven't gone away? Can you go for a run? Can you sit and watch the sunset and drink some tea, or whatever you enjoy doing? I think I preface this by saying our perspective as adults in this world is really critical, because it's important that we're able to model for our children hope. It's extremely critical that children see us experiencing the world in this way, and here's why. Children who see adults modeling hope are more capable of problem solving. Without hope, where's our effort? Where's our ability to move forward and see things in a way that's productive? When kids have hope, they find resources, they look for tools, they see opportunity where other people see a closed door. And so when we have that going on, when children see us with hope and problem solving, they learn that from us. Hope is really the idea that things will look different than they do right now, and that things are going to be okay. It's important because kids are reassured. They don't have always the same toolbox that adults have to process or to know or see really far into the future. Adults have a longer time frame of being able to see, yes, I do recognize that things will get better again. I do recognize that in the weeks to come, things will improve, even as they ebb and flow. And that hard times do come, but it's how we respond to them. When we get stuck on one issue, we prevent our children the ability to learn how to manage the ups and downs of life. In everyone's life, we all face our own problems, our own issues, our own stuff. And I think teaching our kids how to manage the ups and downs and what comes our way by handling it a certain way really makes a big impact. So it's important that we model hope to our children in this situation. When we're building resilience into children, it's important to model that positive outlook. Build their confidence in themselves and in the world around them, in their support system. Tell your kids, I support you, it's going to be okay. Help them build connections where they can have tools and resources outside of your family. Make sure they can express their feelings. Be consistent and teach the importance of healthy behaviors. Despite COVID, this isn't a chance to sit down and not take care of your health or your family's health. It's actually an opportunity, if you change the perspective, for you to reflect on your life and maybe increase your positive and healthy behaviors. And I think the question becomes, when each of us feels hopeless, and I'll own, there are times where I'm like, will this ever end? And it sometimes feels like, no, it's going to go on for a long time. How do we show that? How do we show hopelessness or hopefulness when we don't feel it? How can we show hopefulness when we ourselves don't really feel that hopeful? Because those moments come as adults, and I think part of our task sometimes, as honest as we are with our kids, is to sometimes shield them from some of it. The answer is yes, we absolutely can show hopefulness, and I'll say a step further is that sometimes when we present hopefulness, we feel more hopeful, even when it didn't start out that way. So kind of fake it till you make it. Putting hopefulness into perspective for you and your children is really important. It's not about saying, yep, tomorrow you're going to wake up and everything's going to be perfect. That's not hopefulness. Hopefulness is the idea that you can control what you can control in your environment, and that you're responsible for your response to stuff that happens. And so this isn't a chance to kind of curl up, fetal position, and not move until it's over and pull the blankets over your head. Hopefulness is preparing for times when it's better and appreciating what you have now. We all have those internal moments where we do not feel super hopeful, and it's okay to be honest with your kids. Tell your children the truth at their age level that, you know, this is a really hard time, and sometimes moms and dads struggle just like kids do, but we're in this together, and I'm here to support you, and this is what we're going to do about how we feel, and create an action plan. And when kids see you creating an action plan, it creates opportunities and possibilities. And I think something that a lot of people don't always agree with or don't believe is that it's just as important for your kids to sometimes see you struggle, to sometimes see you go through hard times, and see what you do with it. And the question becomes, how do mom or dad handle bad times? And what that results in is children learning how to handle bad times. And I think when our kids see us handling bad times, saying positive and hopeful things, acknowledging struggle, letting your kids know what's going on, and that you're in control and in charge, really helps them be reassured that they can take ownership in their own lives and can make a difference and make things better for themselves as well. And we talked a little bit earlier on about shifting your focus, but I think when you're talking with your children, it's really shifting your focus to shift theirs. So changing it to what's going well and acknowledging with your kids, it's okay. There are still things going well. We're still a family. We're still making it work every single day. What else is going on outside of COVID-19? And I know we've talked over the last 2 weeks about focusing on things other than COVID-19, because COVID-19 doesn't have to hijack your joy, doesn't have to take away from your family. In fact, there's a lot going on outside of COVID-19. Life goes on. Are there things that you can do differently, even with COVID, that you did before, but maybe you shift what you do? One of the things that I really thought through was, you know, at the beginning, what we had to give up was our focus, and it became a hopeless feeling. We had to give up a graduation, we had to give up a Sweet 16. And when my focus shifted, I was able to problem solve. How can we have a Sweet 16 that's memorable and that is just as fun, even though it's going to look differently? So are there things in your life that you've said, well, because of COVID, I can't do that? Is there any way that you can see those things or do those things differently, so that it doesn't detract or take away from the fun? And so one of the things that we did was we held a graduation ceremony at our house, and we recorded it, and we had this was actually during the shutdown, so their family couldn't come. We were really limited to what we could do, and so we dressed him up. We made him do this embarrassing walk and do his speeches and accept his diploma, and we recorded it and Skyped it to our family. And then we had this massive family dinner, and we ordered this big fun meal, his favorite foods, and we played loud music. And we ended it with a prom where he was able to have prom with his girlfriend. They had been staying in contact, and so even though we were shut down, they were still together. And so the two of them were able to have prom, and we put up lights and we put music out and punch. And we created an alternative, even though it wasn't prom and even though they missed this other opportunity. Changing our perspective allowed us to create an opportunity to think differently and create possibility. How can you use what's going on to benefit you? Is there a silver lining to COVID? In every situation, I would say that in most situations, you can find something good that comes out of it. What you learn about yourself, what you learn about your kids. And for me, the silver lining was my family was more disconnected than I realized. Through COVID and being stuck together, I learned a lot about my kids. I had to teach them. I don't want to teach them again. I'm actually hoping they stay in school. But there's this opportunity that I had to really be a part of something in their lives in a way that I hadn't before. And although I will own teaching in that manner is not my skill set and not my training, but I really found things about that I really enjoyed. And I have come out of COVID-19 as we kind of continue through this process much closer to my kids than when we went in. We're a lot more connected. We spend more time together and we're focusing on quality time versus always rushing to travel, always rushing to go do these different things or go to this function or go see family or see friends and rush out the door. My family has grown a lot closer together. So that's my silver lining. And your silver lining might be different, but my assumption is that there's things that it's done for you, either slowing you down or helping you learn something about yourself that COVID has been a benefit in some way, even though it's hard to think COVID-19 has its benefits. So really just focusing on what is this time teaching you and your family and using it to your advantage. What do you know about yourself? What do you know about your kids that you didn't before? Could you be closer? Could you be more connected? And I think this family, the reason I chose this picture is this family's perspective is looking out into the world versus looking at the camera. And it's a perspective change where, there's more insight and more dialogue going on. I think hope becomes the result. The opposite of hopelessness is hope. When we look at our lives, there is always hope to be found. But like anything, we have to be looking for it. When we focus on what's not going well, when we focus on, our kids are struggling and we're struggling, we lose hope. It's one of the easiest things to start to let slip. It's one of the first things to go. And we don't have to be defined as individuals or families by this sense of hopelessness. It's possible to right now make a commitment to start looking for those positive, joyful moments and those things that we can do despite COVID. What can you do instead? And I think none of us has any control over the pandemic. We can't control when it ends. We can't control when there's a vaccine. And feeling helpless isn't going to change the outcome. What do we have control over is a better question. What can we do right now to make our life better? And when we focus on what we can control, when we focus on what we can do, we regain our sense of hope and we rebuild our life, and it goes much better and we're much happier because our focus is then on, what can we do and what is going well. And I think one thing that I'll say, and I don't say this lightly, because I think one thing that COVID has negatively impacted a lot of things in my life and a lot of things I'm sure in yours. But my guess is if it's affecting you now with COVID, that it may be affecting you later. And so if we build habits now of maybe focusing on the negative or, building anxiety into our thought processes and not stopping those thoughts and trying to problem solve or have solutions, that later on will be affected by that same thing. COVID is essentially a surface problem that we have no control over, and it's not to downplay again the crappy factor, but COVID impacts things in our lives. But COVID is just one problem that we can put in its spot, and it has a spot, and it really is something that we need to address or problem solve or think around because it's changed our lives. But focusing on it through a different lens is really important. This is a little screen blurb of what you can and cannot control. And turning our focus into what we can control empowers us to focus on things we can do versus spinning around the outside of this in what we can't control. I liked that they put the amount of toilet paper at the store. There was a real moment where we were down to one roll. And again, let me remind you, I have 10 kids. And as a mother, I'm going, what's going to happen? I didn't know, but I couldn't control that. And so I problem solved and was able, I literally called people that I knew and said, can you spare a few rolls? Do you know anyone that can? I networked myself some toilet paper. But if I had gotten spun around in the, I can't control how much toilet paper there is, I'm going to panic because I'm out of toilet paper, and that's a bad thing at our house, I think I would have been unable to see that I could maybe find some or ask around. We can't control how long this will last or how others react, even sometimes our kids. We can't control how this will affect them. I couldn't fix that my stepson was so sad that he didn't get to go to graduation or to prom. What I could control was my response or my support or my help for him. I think when we look at what we can control, we can control how we follow social distancing or recommendations. We can control limiting our social media. And we can control our own kindness and grace and attitude. And I think when we do that, it changes the entire environment of our being and of our homes. When you can't control what's happening, challenge yourself to control the way you respond to what's happening. That's where your power is. And I think that's where hope is too, because when we start to feel like we can control some things in our lives or impact something or change how it feels, that's a lot of power. And when we step back from a situation and see there are some things that we can do that are fun, there are some ways that we can connect as a family, we don't have to shut down just because parts of the world did. Don't adapt to live a COVID-19 lifestyle instead of your own lifestyle. A lot of us can really quickly adjust and adapt to a new way of living. And although we have to adapt to wearing masks, we have to help our kids adapt to wearing masks, we don't have to change who we are or how we interact with each other in our homes. We don't have to just stop our living because of COVID. And so I just want to caution you, we don't have to adapt to live a COVID-19 lifestyle that may go long past COVID. And instead, help our lifestyle fit COVID. So change COVID to the problem that you have to make sure fits into your life, not the other way around. Our kids learn from hopefulness. They learn resilience, the ability to bounce back after really, really tough stuff. They learn life lessons about hardship. Hardship comes in everyone's life. We all go through periods of really tough stuff. And when we teach our kids hopefulness, they learn that it's okay and that they're going to bounce back and that better times will come. They learn to ask for help. I had to have awkward conversations about toilet paper. I've had to ask my kids for help. I've had to ask my older teenagers, hey guys, my kids are home from school, I have to work. Can you make sure they're online at such and such a time for schoolwork? And what I noticed was everyone, when they felt that sense of responsibility, stepped up to the plate. And so people just like us want to help. I want to help others as well. And so when I ask for help, it also opens them up to ask me for help. And I noticed it's a much more collaborative system that I have at my house than I've ever had in my life, simply because we're all doing our part and asking each other when we need stuff. Children develop internal strength, which is a little bit different than resilience. And internal strength is the ability to see themselves as a part of a solution. So in what ways can your kids be a part of being hopeful in your family? And you'll notice kids actually have a lot of hopefulness. They adjust and adapt super quickly to pretty tough stuff. So we could take a page out of their book too and learn from them. I think children learn wisdom. So they learn, again, some of that ability to assess a situation and make wise decisions. They see us wearing masks and they say that's a wise choice. And they learn leadership skills. When you have a job, if you've ever had a boss that every time something bad happened would go in their office and freak out and have freak out moments. They were a hard leader to follow. You would maybe be less confident in the purpose of the job as a whole. And I think kids learn leadership from our leadership. As leaders, are we setting the example of calm and steady and maintaining a positive outlook? Because those are leaders that kids follow and learn from. Kids learn to focus on positive, and that brings more positive. When we focus on the positive, we see more positive, and ultimately, I think, bring more positive in, because the more we see it, the more we're able to draw that in. And so I think kids learn that as we focus on positive, we bring more positive, and the reverse is true, that if we focus on the negative stuff, we see more negative stuff, feel more negative, and draw more negative stuff in. And then they learn life skills. So they learn to adapt to stuff. They learn how to function in different environments. And kids learn how to really just thrive in all types of different settings. Kids are resilient, and we can be too. I will tell you, when I found out that my first grader, who's 7 now, was going to have to wear a mask 8 hours a day, except for recess, and at her desk while she was eating lunch, I was like, okay, how's that going to work? There's no way she's going to be able to keep a mask on for 8 hours and not have it down to her chin and be wiping her nose with it. I just picture this, germ factory, to be honest. And I have seen the absolute opposite. In fact, I realized it's harder for me to wear a mask, and I'm a little bit more irritated about having to wear it and go through all of these different steps and keep track of, 10 masks every day than I am noticing in my kids. And that's because kids are really resilient. They're kind of ingrained with this idea that if adults in their world tell them that's the way that it is, here's why, kids will be like, okay. And I've seen that really over and over and over again. And so maintaining this for your kids and presenting them with a sense of calm and information can really help kids be resilient. And then we can take a page out of their book and learn from them that we can be resilient too, and that we can find joy and we can play in the yard and do all of these cool things despite COVID. Despite no prom, no graduation, no party, or no trip, life goes on. And guess what? There was a prom, there was a graduation, and there was a party. Life went on, and we found other ways to do all of those things that we wanted to do because we became solution focused versus problem focused. And so my family actually took this really cool road trip. And I would say one of my favorite vacations that I've ever been on. And let me tell you, planning to trip with a bunch of kids is really complicated, but there was a lot of freedom in saying, pack your bags, we're going on this trip, and we rented this little cabin and we all crammed ourselves together in this cabin. We couldn't obviously stay in hotels and things like that, but we found this other really cool way to take trips. And I noticed that everyone was less stressed because we weren't trying to get to all of these different activities. We weren't trying to overplan. We hung out at the lake. And I think one of the things that did for me was open my eyes to really see sometimes as adults we overplan and we try to over-incentivize and over-excite our kids and really tumble ourselves into a dreadful, horrible vacation or trip or activity because we're trying to make it too fun. And really the fun is in hanging out. Kids are resilient and find ways around bad stuff, and so can we. I think I've seen our kids find ways to play and have fun, even in the parameters. They're hanging out with their friends, they're calling their friends. My daughter has a nightly Skype chat with one of her friends, and they giggle and they do virtual games. They play this virtual game together where they're in a game at the same time. And I think about 6 months ago that probably wouldn't have happened. We would have hung out once or twice a week. Maybe even less than they are now. And although it's not the same, the kids are adapting to that and still having fun. And then kids can cope in different ways, and we can also do that. I think about when kids have a sense of what's going on, they just accept it as part of life in a different way. And as adults, if we can take a page out of that book and do that with our kids, we can help them in a bunch of different ways. my daughter was like, you know, Mom, it'll be over when it's over. It's going to be fine. And I was like, you're right. It is going to be over when it's over. Complaining about it really doesn't help. And I really want to leave you with this final message. Our life has many challenges, and it will again, and we'll go through stuff again. But our life is what we make it. Take back some power in your life and create the life you love by feeling empowered to change what you can and release what you can't. Don't focus on those things that you can't control. Focus instead on those areas that you can control and those things you can be a part of. Focus on your family and creating the relationships within your family system that you've always wanted to have. This little quote just really struck me, and I've got this framed in my house, and it says, surrender to what is, let go of what was, and have faith in what will be. And I bring myself back to that quite often because I think it's easy to want to sink into that spot of, oh my gosh, what if this had happened? Or what if this never changes? Instead of thinking of what steps can I take right now? What kind of life do I want to have? And how do I want to live it to the best of my ability for my family? I just want to thank you guys so much for joining us again today. And I just wanted to say to you all that this last 3 weeks has been a really eye-opening journey for me. I think in teaching something, you always learn something about yourself or yourself as a mom, or, you know, just in a variety of different ways. I have done a lot of these things at home, and I hope that you guys have had takeaways every single week as well. And one of the big changes that I've done after last week is really take the time out to connect with my kids every single day, finding ways to connect with each of them individually. And I have noticed a huge change in my family system. And I've also noticed a huge shift in our focus on hopefulness and our focus on joy in those small moments. And I hope that you guys will find opportunities to do that. And what I want to say to close out these last 3 weeks is be gracious with yourselves. This is not an easy time for anybody. There's no downplaying how difficult this really can be, and there's no telling really what we're going to face in the weeks to come. But I hope that you can, each of you, find what makes you feel hopeful and joyful. Just going to check here to see if there were any questions for the week. It does look like there were no questions that any of you had. And so I just want to thank you all for joining me these last few weeks. And it's been great to be able to share some information with you. And I hope to see you again sometime soon. Bye, everybody.